Republicans are getting beaten at their own game. The party that talks tough on national security was criticizing the president for talking tough on national security. Here's John McCain on Fox last night talking about the killing of Osama bin Laden.
Any president, Jimmy Carter, anybody, any president would have obviously, under those circumstances, done the same thing. And to now take credit for something that any president would do is indicative of the kind of campaign we're under. We're seeing. I've had the great honor of serving in the company of heroes. And you know the thing about heroes? They don't brag.
What a difference 24 hours makes. McCain was asked about the president's trip to Afghanistan today. He said it was the right thing to do.
I think it's a good thing. I think it's always good when the president goes to where young men and women are in harm's way.
So this is not spiking the football in the end zone, as he said.
No, I don't view it as that.
It's hard for Republicans to accuse President Obama of politicizing Osama bin Laden when Mitt Romney stopped by New York City for a photo op with Mr. 9/11 Rudy Giuliani. They used the first anniversary of bin Laden's death to visit a 9/11 firehouse. But Romney chose his words about President Obama carefully.
This, of course, is on the anniversary of the day when Osama bin Laden finally was taken out. And we respect and admire the many people who are part of that, from the president who authorized that attack to the intelligence community that worked on it for so many years to identify where he was, and, of course, to the members of our armed services, particularly SEAL Team 6.
Where was that audio yesterday? Somewhere between yesterday and today. The Republicans figured out that they were playing a loser's game politically. Mitt Romney looked small while Republicans criticized the president on the death of bin Laden. The Obama camp has decided to be aggressive on national security and keep telling the story. They're putting the president's record out in front, and it's working. It would not be surprising if Republicans take national security off the table in this election. They're not off to a good start. Get your cell phones out. I want to know what you think. Tonight's question: does President Obama have the right to run on his national security record? Text A for yes, text B for no to 622-639. Our blog is there for you, waiting for a comment at ed.msnbc.com. We'll bring the results later on in the show. I'm joined tonight by Jon Soltz, the chairman of VoteVets.org, and an Army captain who served in Iraq during the occupation from May to September of 2003. John, good to have you with us tonight.
Thanks, Ed.
Is the Obama team justified in promoting the president's national security record? There's been a lot of criticism, especially yesterday, about politicizing the death of Osama bin Laden. You, as an Army vet, a captain, someone who served, how do you feel about the conversation that's playing out right now?
Well, from an outside observer standpoint, obviously it was different last year when I was in Iraq and bin Laden was killed during my tour. I think the president has every right to do it. When you're on the ground in combat and someone comes to you and says there's a 40% chance that you could put your troops out in a mission and someone could get killed, that's a very serious conversation to have, and it's a very hard decision to make. And I think there's a lot of people, including Secretary Gates, who wouldn't have made that decision. And I can't tell you that I would have. I mean, when you start talking about young American lives that are there, I think it's a very hard decision to make. And I would tell you he absolutely has a right to take credit for it. You don't have to look very further. I mean, they keep invoking the name Jimmy Carter. I mean, the reason John McCain wants to talk about Jimmy Carter is because of Desert One and what happened in Iran. Bill Clinton paid a heavy price for Black Hawk down in Somalia. And look, if that mission hadn't worked, the Republicans have been all over this president. The fact is, he's taking credit for something that he did that they couldn't do for 8 years. And they used 9/11. They used it in 2004 for their convention, Ed. So he has every right to take advantage of something that he accomplished in a very gutsy call that killed the world's #1 bad guy.
So the very thing the Republicans are criticizing President Obama for, you think, as a vet from what you have seen, that the Republicans have politicized military operations and military events for a long time?
Absolutely. I mean, George Bush, look, the first time I went to Iraq, it was May of 2003, and I was with the 1st Armored Division, and we were in Kuwait. We just wanted to get into Iraq, so we got our combat patches. We wanted to get in before George Bush stood up on that aircraft carrier with the mission accomplished sign. I mean, these guys are experts at using the military. They had the Republican convention in New York in 2004 so they could use 9/11 as the backdrop. They stood and did multiple props to talk about the end of the Iraq War in 2003. These guys are experts. It's not just that they use it for their advantage, but they use it to attack Democrats for years. Like I said, Somalia. They don't like to talk about Beirut, but they'll talk about Somalia. They're going to talk about you know, what happened with Jimmy Carter in Desert One. So, look, this president's just taking credit for something that he did that was a very hard decision. It was something the Republicans couldn't do. Look, George Bush had a chance to kill Osama bin Laden in 2001, and he didn't have enough forces on the ground to conduct the mission properly. He chose not to focus on Pakistan with the drones that this president's done, and he chose to send, you know, basically a 5-division commitment, which is half of our standing army, to Iraq for 8 years to look for weapons of mass destruction that weren't there. So clearly what this president is doing is highlighting his success, which he has every right to do in an election year.
Former Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld wrote this on Twitter: the special operators who have every right to spike the football are too professional to do so. The White House might follow their lead. Your response to that, or as someone who served in the Iraq War as part of Donald Rumsfeld's army, how do you respond to that?
I mean, look, I remember where I was at this time last year because my father had died, and I was actually home on leave from Iraq, and you know, it was because we talk. You know, everybody in the army talks, in the military, and everyone was kind of finally relieved that bin Laden was killed. I mean, it was something like, all right, we accomplished something as a team. You know, special operator community, it's a private community. They don't talk a lot as is. They're very professional people. I don't think Donald Rumsfeld has any right to speculate on how they feel or how the military feels. I mean, everybody in the military was happy that Osama bin Laden is killed, just like many Americans were. I think the question Donald Rumsfeld should ask is, why didn't he do it? Well, you know, he had us invade Iraq, and so I certainly don't think he has the credibility to take any type of cheap shot like that, or certainly not to speculate on a military that despises him. I mean, Donald Rumsfeld is one of the most despised Secretary of Defenses in the history of America, and the killing of Osama bin Laden is something that's very popular with the military.
Jon Soltz, VoteVets.org. Great to have you with us tonight.
Thanks,
Thank you. President Obama's poll numbers are rising, and his campaign is going on offense against his Republican opponent, Mitt Romney. E.J. Dionne joins me. And Massachusetts Senator Scott Brown wants to repeal Obamacare, even though his own family benefits from the law. My commentary coming up. Stay with us.